Well, I used to keep my money.
And we're live.
Hi, welcome to another cup of coffee with Paul Sanchez and my old pal Mike
Hey,
Mayhew.
Paulie, how you doing? Can you believe we did this 3 times this week?
I know it's kind of, well, I don't know if people are actually tuning in. I know that
There's that.
you and I don't see much of each other with this pandemic thing. And so now suddenly I'm seeing you 3 times this week. I've had coffee with you 3 times this week.
You know,
And if people are dropping in on our conversations, that's cool.
and if not, that's
If not, we have coffee with my friend Mike Mayhew. It's kind of nice. What's the football picture behind you?
that is the famous Gleason shot. Let me. I guess I can move my camera that way a little bit. You see that there?
Well, I see it fine. It was. I could. It's a little in the background.
Well, they
I didn't
couldn't see. I
realize
just
it was
noticed
the
that they could see. So that's the Gleason shot. I got that
Nice.
when I was in the hospital during that We Heart Mike thing. Somebody donated. The artist, I think, signed it. It's got Sean Payton, Drew Brees, and it was supposed to make money, right? But I never did. Never did try to make that money.
It's a great shot, and that was a great event. I was glad to be a part of it, and I'm glad you're doing
I'm
well.
doing better, definitely. Happy to be back.
Nice to have over your shoulder on Super Bowl weekend.
Yes, it's Super Bowl for people who care about that thing.
Well, it's for me. There's Louisiana talent in there. Leonard Fournette is a New Orleans native. He is a running back for the Bucks. And then Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, is also a New Orleans native. He is a safety for the Chiefs. They both played for LSU. There's LSU players on both teams. Besides them, there's Devin White, superstar linebacker for the Buccaneers. Also, Kevin Minter plays for the Buccaneers, a linebacker from LSU. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back the rookie running back, had a big season with the Chiefs. And another running back, Darrell Williams, with the Chiefs. So there's LSU and Louisiana talent all over the field.
Yeah,
so there's something to for, even if you don't care.
No, I agree, man. That's awesome. At least we got some people from down here being able to be in this crazy year where I didn't think the NFL would make it through the whole thing. To be honest with you, I had no idea.
I watched the NBA bubble and thought, well, they're in a bubble, so they did it well. The fact that the NFL was able to pull off. Now they had canceled games and they had players sick, and some of the games were kind of disastrous because of COVID. I mean, let's face it, the game that we played against the Broncos was barely resembled football.
Right.
They had no quarterbacks. I mean, they should have canceled that one. I don't know what was going on there, but anyway, they made it through, and that's basically what all of us have been trying to do this year in all of our different ways. I mask up, I socially distant, and haven't played many gigs. I've seen the Wright brothers once or twice, but so yeah, they made it through, and we made it through.
I actually had heard that the NFL did a lot of COVID research to sort of make this thing happen, and apparently they actually gave information to the CDC, and the CDC changed some of their guidelines because of the NFL spent so much money just trying to figure out how to keep all these people together in these teams and keep them from getting sick.
That's not surprising in this crazy world that we exist in, Mikey, that the CDC is taking guidance from the NFL.
Well, it's money, right? If you got money, you can make it happen. Let me see if there's anybody in the chat today. Nobody's in the chat yet today. Got a few people watching, but nobody in the chat yet.
We had somebody ask last week if we would talk about 9 Lives, and Dan Baum is the author of the New York Times best-selling book that Coleman, Decay, and I based our songs on. And Dan passed away this year, and there is a memorial for him actually this Sunday, an online memorial. And so I did want to say it was one of the greatest writing experiences and communal music experiences of my life. It was 3 years, and in many ways is ongoing. Coleman Decay is a writer and a crazy friend of mine out in Los Angeles, and he had read Dan's book and was really moved by it, and was in town for Jazz Fest, which he's done every year for 20 plus years, like so many people across the country. And Coleman was staying with me, I think, and he said, "Hey, I think you should, read this book. I think you could do a musical." And I said, "You're crazy. I don't know how to write a musical, And I went up to bed, and he was downstairs smoking cigarettes in the backyard and having coffee at 3 in the morning, which he does. And all of a sudden, I had the idea to write the song "Now I Really Feel Like a Lady" about Joanne Gaidos, first time dressing in drag. And I ran downstairs and I played in the first verse and chorus. And he goes, "Oh, we're off and running, buddy boy." And mostly, as he liked to say, and he still likes to say, writing is two guys in a room trying to make each other laugh. And so I would sort of follow Dan's book, and words would sort of jump out at me in sort of wannabe songs. And then I'd make up a verse and a chorus, and then we'd start throwing lyric ideas at each other. And it was a fun year and a half of writing. And through the help of the Threadheads, who have changed New Orleans music, and if you don't know who the Threadheads are, the Threadheads were just music fans, Jazz Fest specifically fans, New Orleans music fans, who met on the Jazz Fest chat forum, hence Thread. And they called themselves Threadheads, and they were from all over the world, as far away as Australia. And they'd meet up at Jazz Fest to go to, the Congo Square together or the beer booth, and they have their traditions. And after the flood, they decided they wanted to do more to help New Orleans musicians. So they have this event called the Pottery. They say because of a misspell, I say because somebody was drunk. But it's a Threadhead Pottery that in the last 15 years has raised, well over $1 million for New Orleans related charities. In addition to having started a record label that was a not-for-profit label, all the money went back into making records for artists affected by the flood. And again, over $1 million raised and over, I believe, 70 records released, which literally changed the face of New Orleans for generations to come. So they're really great folks and generous, and they helped me with 9 Lives to raise the money to record at Mark Bingham's place, Piety. And we used 135 musicians. And it's really special to me now. There's so many of them on the record are gone, like Herman Ernest Jr. and, of course, Alan Toussaint. And, but it was a lovely time, exciting, and many, many stories. Herman, since I just mentioned him, comes to mind because Dan passed away from cancer, which he fought for a few years, and Herman also battled cancer and was battling cancer when I asked him to be a part of 9 Lives. I had specifically written the song "It Could Have Been Worse," the song that Irma Thomas sings in the play. She didn't sing it on the record. I didn't have that kind of money. But Irma did sing it on the record. I did have that kind of money.
Look at you.
God, the third hit. That's right. She did it in the show. She did do it on the record. That was amazing. So many stories. Jeez. I'll get to that in a second. So Irma's going to sing this song, and the part of her drummer I had written for Herman. It was Wilbert Rollins' father, Da, who was dying of cancer. Well, I knew Herman had been fighting cancer. I didn't know how bad it was. And when he showed up, he was in a lot of pain. But he was game, man. He was beautiful and professional. I remember when we went to do Could Have Been Worse, he said to Matt Perrine, who had done all the brilliant arrangements for the records, "Hey, Matt, this is supposed to be 1966. And Matt was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "And this would have been so-and-so in this session." And Matt's like, "Yeah." And Herman went, "This would have been a stand-up bass." And Matt broke into a big smile and just nodded and went, "You sure would." And he went and got set up for stand-up bass. He was so pleased that Herman nailed the authenticity. And after several tracks, Matt came to me, and I was so busy with the overall big picture and listening and just thrilled at this project. But Matt was working close with him, and he said, "Hey, man, Herman's being real brave, but he's hurting, and he's on a lot of painkillers, and I think he's giving you plenty. Maybe you should just ask him if he wants to split." And I said, "Thanks, man. Thank
You weren't
you."
even paying attention at that point. You're trying to produce the record. And,
Well, he's in the room with him, so he's right there watching him. And so I went to Herman, and I said, "Man, you did great work for me, but you look like you might be hurt." And he goes, "I am, baby." I said, "Well, why don't you go home? I pay you for the day and everything's good and I love you. You know that. And he goes, I appreciate that. I said, could you maybe do a vocal for me? Because I really wrote this part for you as part of Herman's drummer, Da Rollins. And he broke into a smile. He said, I replaced Da when he passed away. I said, no, man, I didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, he was sick and dealing. I wanted to play some gigs. I was young and I was glad to have the gig. And so, yeah, I'd sing that for you. What's the line? And I gave him the line. He went in and he sang the line, which was, Da had hurt his hand on the docks. And his sons ask if it hurts. And he says, yes, boys, it hurts bad, but it could have been worse. And he said it from such a deep place because he was in such pain. And we all teared up. And after the take, he said, was that okay? And I don't think I even could speak. I think Mark Bingham finally spoke and said, that was beautiful, Herman. You can go home. And that was the last time we saw him. But his imprints all over the beginning of the record, his big, beautiful heart and soul that he gave me right up till the end. It might have been the last thing he recorded. So that was special to me. And Irma came in to sing and was really pleased, mentioned, that Ernest Herman had played for her. And she said, I want to make sure I get the phrasing right. Would you sing this with me one time at the control board? And then I just soared over the moon. My soul just leapt over the moon. I'm singing with Irma Thomas at the control board on a song that I wrote with Coleman. So I'm singing it with her. And first time through was great. And the second time through, we got to the bridge and she waved me off because she was feeling a different phrasing. And she altered the phrasing and she altered a little bit of melody. And it was what it is. It's what it is on the record. It's beautiful and it's perfect and it's just like one of her songs. And I said, I'll give you a songwriting credit on this. And she said, what for? And I said, because you just altered the melody and changed the phrasing and made it yours.
That's so Nashville of you, Paul.
And she said, baby, I do that for any song I record. And I said, well, this is what I do. So I gave credit to several people on the record. And as the thing tried to turn into a bigger piece, a broader musical, that came back to complicate things because producers would go, oh, you have too many songwriters. I don't want to deal with that many people, or that's going to be hard. You'll have to get releases from everybody. And I was just trying to be altruistic. I wanted it to be a community. I wanted the recording. And if it ever did make money, which it didn't, but, who knows? Life is long. You never know, David Simon and Eric Overmeyer could team up again for something about New Orleans, and it could be that. And a lot of people would make money because I made sure that I tried to include as many friends as I could and in as many ways as I could. And plus, it was too big a project for me. Like, Peter Boutte and his cousin Reuben wrote one of the Indian chants, Bring the Mountain to Him. First of all, I couldn't write an Indian chant because I'm not an Indian. The song Tootie is more of a song, and it's got an Indian rhythm behind it because they're Mardi Gras Indian rhythm behind it because they're playing that for me, Peter and Reuben. But when it came time to do the chant, it was them. I mean, it was what they do all the time at their drum circle and all the time, for years, for 20 years now, is they make stuff up. They improv this beautiful New Orleans poetry. And Titi Boutte, who was an actual Indian when she was a kid, was in on it. And so what they created was something I couldn't. And then right towards the end of the project, now it took a year and a half of recording, a friend of mine, a successful white lawyer in Lakeview, of all people, goes, this is amazing. You have almost every style of New Orleans music of 40 years represented in this record, except for rap. And I went to Coleman and I told him that, and Coleman said, well, should we write a rap song? At the time, we were both about 50. And I said, no, two 50-year-old white guys who've never written a rap song probably shouldn't try and write one. So I called Shamar Allen and I said, hey, man, I need a rap song on the record. And it's got to be right before the flood from the character Ronald Lewis. And he goes, oh, Uncle Ronald, I used to live around the corner from him before the flood. Sure, I got you. And he wrote maybe the best song on the record, House of Dancing Feathers, recorded it at his own studio, played, sang everything himself. So
Smart's quite a talent.
He's an amazing talent, producer, player. I can't say enough about that guy's ability. And then on top of that, he does things like, guns, trumpets for guns, where he's getting kids in the city to give their guns up in exchange for a free trumpet and he'll even show him how to get started playing it. You know, and there's
Wow.
plenty he could be doing with his time. He's got a couple of kids himself. He's a busy man, but he always tries to help. You know, he's a good guy, and he added a couple songs to the record. King for a Day was you know, it was supposed to be the Social Aid and Pleasure Club song, and again, that's more his world. So I didn't bother to write one. I just said, hey, Shamar, I need one for Ronald when he came back after the flood and led his first parade. And he came back with, of course, him again playing all the instruments and the drums and everything, King for a Day. And it's gorgeous. Matt wrote a song. The opening song of the thing is called Betsy's Coming, and it's an instrumental that Jason Marsalis was on, and Matt wrote this incredible arrangement, true, you know, jazz arrangement. And anyway, I could go on and on about who wrote and who contributed in the stories. And
You know, a little side note about Shamar. I remember the first time I met him, y'all had written a record together, I think. Yeah,
oh,
one of the first things that was it your record or his?
yeah, Bridging the Gap.
Right.
That's when he
So
called me and said, Uncle Paul, I want to make a record together. I want to do something that I want to do. I'll sing old people's music like you like, and you sing young people's music like I like. I said, okay, great, let's do it.
and you'd call me down to come mix it,
That's
and
right.
so I
That's right.
came over to the house and I'm mixing, and the thing you know, he picked everything up so quickly. He's just watching and just always in there, seeing what's going
Oh,
on.
he's
And then the
always
next time, right? So the next time he makes a record, you know, I'm like, hey man, you want me to mix something? Just send it to me. So I sent him something, and he's like, yeah, that's fine and all, but I like what I was doing better. So
yeah,
you know, at that point, he had already kind of he picked it up
yeah,
and
yeah,
started
yeah.
doing it
Oh, yeah,
himself.
he learned
You know,
fast, and his own taste developed quickly.
yes,
Remember
yes,
when his second rock record came out? I went for a ride with a friend around my age who loves Shamar and is a musician, and I won't say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, because he didn't like it. You know, he was like, I think the production is a little bit too high ending and it needs more bottom. And I was like, you're coming at it from our age. You know, our
right,
age was about big bottoms and big giant speakers. These kids today have tiny speakers and they're mostly listening through their headphones, and the sonics are completely different. What they're going for in the music is and I couldn't convince him that it was a generational thing. He thought that maybe Shamar should adjust the mix on the record. And I was like, I know Shamar, this is the mix he was going for, and it's going to work for the people his age.
right,
It's contemporary.
right.
And but he knew that. He learned
I
fast.
think it was some of those tracks that I had mixed. I'd mixed like the Rockstar song or something like that. I did a version of it that did have all the big low end and all that
Right.
stuff like that. And so I did. He had a chance to hear it.
Right, and
That wasn't what he was going for.
nope.
No, he wanted something
He
else.
knew,
So
and more importantly, he knew what he wanted.
yeah, and that's fine. You know, I mean,
Like
that's
in a
boy.
space of a year and a half, he went from I'm figuring out how to make records to I know exactly the records I'll be making.
Right, right. And man, that's I tell you, as an artist, that's the best thing. I mean, as a guy who's trying to work for artists a lot of times, trying to chase down something for them sometimes can be difficult. It's much easier when somebody kind of knows already where they want to land and what they want to do. And in Shamar's case, he doesn't need any of our help. He's got it down. He's whatever. I
No,
got
I mean
this.
that's one way, that's his way to work. Like my way is to get a bunch of musicians in the studio and have them know the songs, but not too much, because I want I want some accidents. I want some rock and roll. Like when we made the Rolling Road Shows record right after Nine Lives. Nine Lives was Matt's arrangements were so intense and so incredible, and it took such focus for the musicians and the players, and it was a lot of work. And so I said, I got to make a rock record. So Debbie and Matt and Eric Bolivar and Sonia, y'all all show up tomorrow, and we're going to just play a set of music and record it, and I'm going to put it out as a record. And they were like, well, what songs? And I was like, don't worry about it. I'll send you a set list tonight. We've played it for the last year. Don't worry. And Debbie goes, if I can't worry, how am I supposed to make a record? But sure enough, the next day they came in and we recorded the first song. And, I think Eric said, hey, I had a mistake there. I said, great, moving on. And we got the second song down, and Matt goes, hey, Paul, I had a mistake, in the bar or whatever. And I go, it's fantastic. I love mistakes. We're moving on. So we did Light on Fire. And because I wanted to remake some of the Cowboy Mouse stuff, and we did Light on Fire. And at the end of the song, Eric got off of his drums and he walked and met Matt midway, so I couldn't hear him on their microphones. And they had a little conference. And then they went back to their positions. Matt nodded to Eric, and Eric said, "Hey, man, Matt and I discussed it, and we each had a mistake on that song, but it was in a different spot, so we really need to do it again." And I waited a second, and I said to the talkback mic, "All right, we'll do it again, but somebody better make a fucking mistake because this is rock and roll."
Right, that's perfect. You know, I was telling a friend of mine yesterday because when I got back in town, he had gotten in touch with me about, working together. But he had some very specific ideas of things that he wanted to do, and so I was like, well, if you've got these ideas, and he's got access to GarageBand and the same kind of stuff, these kids can. I won't call. He's not a kid, but you can create all your own music on your iPhone now. It's ridiculous, right? I mean, they can make a beat and do the bass and the whole nine. Anyway, he kept coming to me with stuff, and then I would start to play around with it. And you know this, as an artist, you're always going to bring what you do to something. You can't help it, right? I mean, whatever you do, you're bringing part of you. That's what people hopefully hire you for, right? Anyway,
Right,
it was like,
of
no, I
course.
want you to play it like whatever. I'm like, man, I am not that guy. And I also clued him in on another thing. I mean, you're a control freak. You're going to probably want to do most of this yourself because whenever you bring someone into this, they bring their own thing, their own experiences, their own view
That's
of
why you're
music.
asking.
You know,
For me, if I got a player and they ask me what to play, I go, you
what would
know,
you play? Right,
what would you play? Because I love your stuff. That's why you're here.
right,
And if I want to hear halftime arpeggios, I'll lay them down myself later when everybody's gone,
right, right,
because that's my trip.
right.
If I have a producer, same thing. Like, I produce my own records, but if I have a producer and they'll say, well, what do you want? I'll go, if I wanted what I wanted, I'd be producing the record. Go for it, man. Have fun.
Right.
In fact, when we did a record called Life is a Ride, my friend Chris Joseph, who's since written a book called Life is a Ride, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 5 years ago. And um, he wanted to be in that survival number, and he is, but he went the alternative medicine route, and he yoga and all kinds of things you can read about in his book. But as his friends, we just wanted to help in that moment where it was happening. So a bunch of Threadhead artists got together. It was, Carlo Nuccio and Alex McMurray and Matt Perrine and Craig Klein and Debbie Davis and Susan Cowsill and
Wow.
yeah, I mean, everybody, when they heard, you know, Debbie literally emailed me and said, I heard about it. No, Susan wrote to me and said, I heard about the record, Cancer Sucks, Russ and I are coming. And so I wrote to Debbie and said, look, I don't have any money because people put up just enough for us to get this done, to get it to Chris before he went to Germany to get some alternative treatments. And so we're trying to get it done in a day. And I wrote Debbie and said, look, I don't have any money, but I know if you hear that Susan and Russ are on the record, you're going to ask me why I didn't ask you. And I'd say I didn't have any money. And you'd tell me I was an ass and that I should have called you. So I just figured I'd let you know. And she wrote back, you're such an ass. I'll be there.
Yeah.
And so it was great, right? So we had this great day of recording, and everybody was love, and we were all sending love to Chris. So the next day, I'm alone with the young guy who's mixing it, Nick, and he says to me on the first song, he goes, "Look, I see what's going on here. It's you guys are doing a beautiful thing, and I want to do a beautiful thing. Let's get this done in a day." And I said, "Great." He goes, "You just tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you, and we'll get this done as quickly as we can." And I said, I've worked with you before. You worked with Mark Bingham. I trust you. So what I want from you is your best. Whatever your best is, you put it up on that board, play it back for me. I'll say thank you, and we'll move on. That'll be the only input you'll hear from me today. And he went, I've heard this before. Okay, but I'll give you whatever you want. We'll tweak it after the first mix. So he threw up the first song, and he goes, what do you think? I said, is that the best you got? And he says, you don't have any tweaks? I said, not if that's the best you got. And he went, give me a second. And then he did. And then he made himself happy. And then I said, great.
Michael Barbiero told me that. Michael Barbiero, one of the guys who produced one of you guys' records back in the day. Remember, but he did like Appetite for Destruction and like a million little records that you could kind of go through. But he told me, he says, the artists hear things in their own way. They hear whatever they're going to hear. Not you in particular, but most
first of all,
artists.
the artist's hearing is all different.
Right.
Depends on what kind of music they play live. Their frequencies are damaged in ways they're unaware.
Right.
And also dependent on that artist's experience level in the studio, they don't understand the way sonics push each other in the studio, so that if they say, can you just change this one little thing? Of course, the engineer is going to say yes. It's going to take him an hour to 2 hours to do it and a lot of money, but he'll do it if you want. it might not be any better, or it might be like not even noticeably better. It's just
I've
it's an
noticed
art
that
in
over the
itself.
years. I would go through and listen to my mixes. But anyway, before I move on, Barbiero said, "Don't let an artist tell you when a mix is done, because
Ah,
they can't hear
that's
everything
funny.
that's in there. Make sure you know when it's done. Make them happy, but know
I
when
like
it's
working with engineers I trust and letting them do their thing, or producers I trust and letting them do their thing. I think that each person's mix is their own
it
expression of
is.
who they
It's an
are
artist.
and how they hear music.
Hmm.
And I don't want to deny somebody else's expression of how they hear music, because I've had that done to me. It's not cool. It's not fun.
Right.
And whether you're a player or whether you're the guy twisting the knobs, we're making music together. When it's your turn at bat.
Right.
So I stepped back, and he had a ball. He asked me a few more times, and I just said, I'm just going to keep saying thanks. So keep rolling, man. And he did.
Uh,
He mixed it in a day.
I'm gonna look at. We get a little bit on the YouTube chat here. Mark Membrila. He says that there's a story that you told before about Ride with the Devil that he would love to hear again at some point. But
Yeah, well, Ride with the Devil was written about a friend of my brother, Joe, a guy who owned a bar out in Chile Gentili back before Katrina. So before the before times, even. This is, I mean, for the children that we call the before pandemic times or before times, this is before the before times. This is before Katrina. It was called the Bacchus Lounge in Chile Gentili. And Clarence Thorson was his name, but Tank, everybody called him. And Tank was one of the wildest characters I ever knew. Uh, he was the first person, not the first person, but he, I, I don't know if Tank started the crew of Drew, but I know he was a king, where the crew that marches out in Gentilly, uh, the king and queen stand on a dumpster across from Slicky's Pizza. This is all old school. I don't know what they do these days. This is when I was a kid, and get a pitcher of beer poured on their heads. And anyways, these wild hippies that hung out there. But he was a very generous guy. Like, he came to see my first band with Fred LeBlanc, the Backbeats, and he said, that kid's a monster. He needs a better set of drums, because Fred's drums at the time were terrible. The hi-hat stand was so crappy, he used to hold it together with his toes to keep it from falling over. And so he bought him a set of drums. He just said, walked him into Warlines and said, buy some drums. You need nice drums. You're going to be somebody. And so he saw a friend of mine, Manny Colomb, in a field marching a drum and bugle corps up in somewhere in the Northeast for a championship. And Manny tells me the story that he saw this black limousine tearing across the field, raising dust. Everybody's like, who the hell's riding a limousine across the field? Tank rolls down the window and yells, Edgar, I want to take a ride with the devil. And so a lot of the song came from that. My brother Joe was with him right at the end. And that bridge is about that moment, about where Tank looked at him and said, I can almost see the vultures circling, man. Don't let them pick at my bones when I'm gone. And Joe was like, yeah, you could be fine. Like, he didn't believe it was the end.
mm-hmm.
And he had somebody in his family that was ill. He said, I got to go, and Tank said, hey, Jose. And my brother told me, he said, he looked back at me. He said, yeah. He said, take it easy. And I was like, yeah, man. And it was like I was in a hurry. And he said, he looked me in the eye. He goes, no, take it easy. And then he breathed his last. And so that's what Ride with the Devil's about.
You're not necessarily, saying where he's headed or anything like that. You're gonna go party down there.
No, no, no.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah. It's although, if he did, they have a heck of a horn player down there.
Yes, right.
And they'll have a hard time keeping up with his hours.
Yeah, but said, sinners are way more fun, right? See if we got. He said thank you.
He also used to play Santa
welcome,
Claus
Mark.
to the neighborhood children.
Did he really?
As he was, every year at Christmas, all the poor kids in the Gentilly neighborhood of St. Roch would come to the front of the bar, and he would be dressed as Santa and give away free toys to all the kids in the neighborhood. He did that for 20 years, too. So he wasn't just this wild character that we've turned him into or whatever. He was a human being who had some beautiful qualities and some crazy qualities, and that's what makes up New Orleans characters, really.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking when you were telling the Herman story, Herman's funeral was one of the few times I traveled into New Orleans, just when I wasn't working or something else, and I remember seeing you at the funeral. Um, and it was the first time you and I had seen each other in a couple of years. Was at
Oh yeah.
Herman's funeral. It's been a few years since we'd even seen each other.
I can only tell a couple of these stories because both Tank and his brother Richard are no longer with us, but they were both very generous. So I needed a van to move a PA, which Tank had bought for me, to the gig, and my El Camino had gotten trashed, parked in front of my house. And so my brother Joe sets it up. He goes, "Yeah, Richie, Tank's brother, is going to lend you his van." So I go over to Richie's, and Richie he was an intense looking dude. He was like a thinner Tank, and he scared me. And I go to pick up the van. I'm just this kid, And he goes, "All right, here's the keys. Now, if anything happens, if you get pulled over, if you get in a wreck, don't run, but walk away. Just leave the vehicle and your musical stuff. Just walk away." Like, okay.
I can do that.
I can do that. Well, I didn't get in a wreck, and it was the 70s. What can you do? You had to make the gig.
Yes. That was an interesting. A friend of mine and I were looking at Wings yesterday. One of the Wings concerts, the rock show, and it actually was filmed.
Wings Over America.
Yeah, I guess it.
Wings Over.
Yeah, was that
1976?
Yes, right. But the concert didn't come out until the 80s or whatever. So we're looking.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that's when it's listed as a copyright for the film part of it, or rock show or whatever it was. Anyway, I'm going. This has got to be the 80s because Paul's wearing this pink scarf, and Linda's got this thing on with frills, and they look like they were in Madonna's backing band. And I'm like, dude, it's so much the 80s. Look, this has got to be the 80s. Well, it was 76 that actually it was recorded in.
Really?
And I'm thinking, there he goes again, ahead of his time. I mean, I'm looking at it going, this guy, this is the way everyone dressed in the 80s, and he's doing it in 76. I thought it was hilarious. Paul McCartney, huh?
It's tough to explain to the young people how influential the Beatles were.
And even at that point in Wings, right? I mean, it's just crazy to me. But I'm telling you, somebody go look at that. It's on Amazon Prime right now, I think, for free. Go look at it and tell me they don't look like Madonna's backing band. It's, I mean, I know it's Paul McCartney, but come on. I mean, it's just like, wow, look at that pink. It's crazy.
Well, that's the thing about getting old, too, is like, I read a story once that Zach Starkey went to Ringo years after, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, is it true you used to be in Paul McCartney's backing band?" And Ringo's like, "No, not quite. You're not gonna expect anything."
Right. I wasn't actually in the backing band. You and that John Lennon feller, or whatever his name was, I don't know. So
I got to meet McCartney, after the flood. I was in London after Katrina, and this friend of mine said, "Oh, he's doing a book signing on Saturday, and they're giving away tickets today at Piccadilly Circus. It's Wednesday." So me and some friends went and waited in line. It was, like 10,000 people waiting to get 3,000, things. And somehow we got the last 4 things. And so one of the people I was with had a Re-New Orleans black T-shirt that he was hiding under his black shirt, because it was when you got there, it was all very it was a 3-story bookstore. The first floor was to make sure your ticket was authentic, because there were thousands of people trying to get in.
Right.
So they authenticate you on the first floor. On the second floor, they take away all your possessions, your purses, your backpacks. They all get put in lockers. You're only allowed to have the children's book that McCartney's signing. You can't bring anything else.
No, can't, right.
And you get to the third floor, there's a long line of snakes, and you can see McCartney off in the distance, and there's security patrolling the line with headsets. And they're like sort of commanding officers going, "Right then, no records, no Beatle paraphernalia." And this woman walks up and she goes, "When you get to Sir Paul, please don't tell him you love him. He knows you love him." Just hand the book and move along. So we're getting closer and closer, and my friend's got the shirt, and no gifts. If you have a gift, you'll be escorted away or whatever.
Right.
So my friend panics, and I say, "I'll give him the T-shirt. Renew New Orleans. The flood had just happened, So I sneak it under my shirt. And it's just us and them. And there's this, now I'm saying older guy, I'm that guy's age now. This older guy he's there, he's kind of paunchy, and he doesn't have any children with him, and he doesn't have a children's book in his hands. And a security guard walks up to him all dressed in black and goes, "Is that a CD in your pocket, mate?" And the guy just drops his head and he goes, "Yes." And they take him by both arms and escort him away. He was just in line to meet McCartney. He was up next.
Oh no.
And I go up, and so I lay the shirt down, and security jumps forward to take me. And McCartney looks and he sees the shirt, New Orleans, and he goes, "Oh, no, it's quite all right. I'm on my way to the BBC to do an interview about the situation there. How is it?" And so, well, it's, bad, but I think thanks for the help or whatever. And I got to say to him, I just wanted to say thanks because of you and your friends. I got to see the world with my guitar and my songs. And he smiled. He said, "Thanks, mate." So that was the cool.
Yeah.
Mo-
A McCartney story.
the McCartney story.
We love it.
I just made Jonathan just very happy out there if he is ever going to see this.
I have to tell Mr. Freddie Blue, yeah, we did talk about Dan Baum, although I'm not sure how deep into the story we got. He just jumped in on the chat and asked
Well,
if we'd
he kind of jumped around, but Dan was so intelligent. First of all, he like to be in his company. You were in the company of somebody who's an amazing intelligence, and he was defiant. Like he came down here to do a magazine article and decided it was going to be a book, and he quit working for the New York magazine, the New Yorker, to do it. And he believed in himself. He was utterly confident. He had the complete devotion and support of his wife, Margaret, in every book and decision. But she also was like a great wife is, like she was his grounding. Like, we were on our way to do an interview, and I said to him, I tried to stick to your words as much as I could because you had really captured these characters beautifully, and I wanted to stick to your words when I wrote the songs. And he said, "Thank you." And then after the interview, he said, I called Margaret and told her what you said. And she said, they're not your words. Those people said that to you, and you wrote it down. And I said, that's so perfect. That's what a wife would do. She kind of reminds you. And he just loved it, and he loved her very much. They were an example of what a creative couple should do. They were a team. I was thrilled, and when Dan told us when we first went to him with 9 Live, when Coleman first approached him and said he'd like to buy the rights to do the thing as a musical, Dan said, "I thought, yeah, sure, I'll take their money. This is never going to happen." and then it turned into this project in New Orleans that he really loved. He was there for the debut, and he loved New Orleans music, so he loved, Alan Toussaint being on it and Irma being on it and all that stuff. And he was excited about the prospect of it going to Broadway, which we had a few shots through this help of Michael Cerveris. We got hooked up with the Public Theater, and that was an education for me. I didn't have Dan's confidence, or Michael's confidence for that matter, and I let too many other people sort of say what it could and should be, and it was a lesson. In the end, the public hooked me up with a writer who had gone to high school, I think, in New Orleans. She wasn't from here, but had spent some time here. And we worked on it, or she rather worked on the book for a while, but it wasn't Dan's 9 Live. Dan captured New Orleans as I see it and feel it and live it. And that's what inspired me to write all those songs, was that it captured the fact that we're joyous in the face of despair, and we're joyous in the face of joy. Mm-hmm. So my opening song was Fine in the Lower 9. She wanted to cut that and change it into a song called I Feel Like Dying Today. And I just felt like we were in different places. What are you doing?
Having my coffee. I put it out of my reach.
And so I decided not to pursue it with her. I felt like she had her own vision of it that wasn't really Dan's vision or mine. And in the end, she did a thing called Airline Highway that, while it didn't last long on Broadway, it's, I think, been successful like in Chicago and New Orleans or around the country. I think she got what she wanted out of it. And I continue to hope that 9 Lives becomes something, Mm-hmm. I have a friend up in New York, Dickie Wentz, who has the idea it should be a mini-series because it's such a lot of songs and it's such a 40-year period of New Orleans rich history. And in this time of the pandemic where it's such a hopeful story, it's such a redemptive feeling. So that would be fun. I would love to see it turn into. I love movies.
Right.
You know, I don't know much about Broadway, and that would be an experience and a learning experience. But I so love movies, and that would be really joyful for me if somebody went, yeah,
Did
yeah,
you see
that'd be
Ma
fun.
Rainey? I've
So,
been hearing about the Ma Rainey's. Uh,
yeah, I wish there was more music in it. It's a play,
got you.
so ultimately it's a
I haven't
play.
seen it
It's
yet.
more about the characters and the interaction than it is about the music, because the music, unlike these songs, like Nine Lives, the songs tell the story, move the story along. This is just her singing the blues.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
To be honest, I was kind of hoping more to see Ma Rainey singing the blues, which was incredible when she did it.
Right.
But at the same time, it was a great play, and I enjoyed it from that uh, level. I think the way it was promoted, I was expecting more music, and as was my wife Allison. You know, that was the
That's what I
thing
was
we
thinking.
sort of.
That's why I brought it up. I thought that too.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because the one thing problem I have with musicals in general is just when everything sort of stops and people start dancing and whatever it becomes this like La La Land, right? Those even though I'm sure it's a great story, it's hard for me to get past the everybody breaking into dance. But I would love to see a musical that was just more gritty, that sort of had some real life, where it just didn't erupt into
That's
dance
actually,
numbers.
you know, what I'd really like to do is like, if I could ever have the film rights to it, I would love to have somebody that knew New Orleans. Like, there's this director, he's from here, um, Eddie
Uh
Jemison.
huh.
He's a friend of my friend Vance DeGeneres, and he made this movie called King of Herrings. And it's a real gritty black and white movie with these New Orleans characters. And if it was that kind of feel, gritty, and I say like the movie Les Mis, where they put the soundtrack in the actors'
Right.
ears. Well, I already have a really expensive soundtrack that we could take the vocals off of, put the soundtrack in the actors' ears, and then film it really gritty on the streets in New Orleans. And really, I think that could be something really
Well,
fun
look,
and
man,
special and
you've
different.
inspired me. We should do a proof of concept. Just pick a song and just put something together on one song, just as a proof of concept. What the heck?
I forgot I was talking to a
Yeah.
director.
Well, a wannabe director. As we spoke about,
You're learning. You're like Shamar, though. You're learning fast, Mikey.
I am trying to learn fast. Me and Paul talked a little bit before we got on the phone about if in the '80s, if you could do what you can do now with video and video effects and editing on a computer.
Imagine the Beatles made Sergeant Pepper on 4-track, on 4-track machine, and having to overtape it. If they had GarageBand,
Oh my gosh. Who knows what would have happened, right? And in fact, when I was 15 years old, I used two tape decks and went back and forth. And then a few years later, I discovered that that's basically what the Beatles had done. And, I was really, at 18, I'm like, yeah, I got this stuff down. I'm thinking the same way as George Martin. I got this down.
yeah.
But,
The thing about producing, I find, is that you never stop learning,
right.
and that's the thing about Shamar. He really loves learning. I mean, I remember when I first met him, he had been raised traditional jazz, and I was hiring him on gigs where it was like Susan Cowsill. And whenever I play with Susan, I ask her if she'll sing "The Rain in the Park" and other things because it's a song I grew up with, and so many people did, and they love hearing it. And she always is generous and does it. And so Shamar was learning it, and he was the first time through. He's kind of like, hey, Susan, can you give me that chord progression again? And she had to show it to him a couple of times. And so afterwards, after we had done the song, I went over to him. I said, "Hey, man, I know you're traditional jazz. Does it bother you doing the pop stuff?" And he made a motion like he was putting something in his pocket. He went, "Like I'm keeping that." And he did. He's like you said, he sponged it up, and next thing you know, he's got pop effects in his own songs, and he's a quick study. I mean, every record, I'm sure, gets better. I haven't heard his most recent thing, but you know,
Freddie thinks we
he's
can have a
it,
Netflix series out of this. We could have Nine Lives be Nine Lives on Netflix, the series.
Nine Lives. Well, the thing about Nine Lives, when somebody said, "Can you talk about Dan and Nine Lives to honor him?" I said I could do an entire radio show. There could be stories, endless stories about Nine Lives because it was just crazy.
I showed
In
up for
fact,
like 2 sessions, and there was musicians everywhere in Piety Street. I mean, you walk in the back, and it's like a who's who of New Orleans musicians. And then I'm like in like, hey, you got to clear out because the mayor's coming down today to do whatever. And I'm like, holy, what day did I come down here? Is this like this every day? And you're like, yeah, pretty much every day. It's been like this. So it was pretty interesting to watch. I mean, it was a big production. And
Well, you know, at one point, I got an email from somebody who said, "Hey, man, you're using all these great New Orleans musicians, and you don't have Johnny Vodakovich on drums in this thing. You got to have Johnny Vodakovich on drums." So I call up Johnny, and it's going to be this cut. It's like a dance. It's a little shuffle thing, and it's going to be Johnny on drums and George Porter on bass, and Alex on guitar, and Chaz on washboard, and Walter Wolfman, not Alex, Walter Wolfman on guitar, and Walter was going to sing a verse, and George was going to sing a verse, and Chaz was going to sing a verse, because it was about these guys working on the dock and trying to tell the new guy to slow down. You don't want to work too fast. So get to the session, and George had insisted it be an early session because he had something else to do later in the day. So Johnny gets there at 10 in the morning. He goes, "Hey, Paul, you know, it's early for a session." I said, "Yeah, I know, but that's what George wanted." So he goes, "Well, where the fuck is he?" I said, "I don't know. He's the guy who said he wanted to be here early. He's not here." He goes, "I'm going to go across to Frady's and get a donut and some milk. I'll be out on the sidewalk." And it was a warm day. And a little time goes by, and I go outside, and Johnny's sitting there in his shorts with his legs spread, the great Johnny Vodakovich, having a donut and some milk. And he looks up, he goes, "So where the fuck is George?" I said, "Johnny, and I've never worked with Johnny before." I said, I'm working with George Porter and Johnny Vodakovich. I'm just trying to keep my cool. It's two legends." And I go, "Johnny, I'm really sorry. You know, he wanted to be here, and I don't know why." He goes, "Don't worry about it. I just called him." So he pulls out his cell phone, and he calls him, and he goes, "George, it's V. Where the fuck are you?" "Oh, oh, oh. All right, all right. What time?" "All right, I'll tell him." And he hangs up. He goes, "He's crazy about his computer, and the thing drives him nuts. Well, it went out this morning, and he forgot out with the session, and he went out straight out to the Mac store, and he's out there. He's almost finished. He's going to be here when he's done. Trust me, you wouldn't want him here if he had a broken computer. He'd drive you nuts." so, so George gets out there finally, you know, and he's in a great mood. His computer's working, and he comes up to me. He says, "Paul, the part you got me singing about the guy trying to tell him not to work too fast, that happened to me on the dock with Aaron Neville." He said, "When I was young, Aaron got me a job on the dock, and I was all excited, you know." Aaron said, "I got you a job." So I wanted to impress Aaron, show him how hard I was going to work for him. He walks over to me and goes, "Slow down, motherfucker." and then, so Walter, who I've seen since 1980, or, you know, I've been watching Walter forever. I love Walter Wolfman Washington.
Mhm.
And he comes in, and he's kind of scared. And he walks up to me and goes, "Hey, Paul, what you want me to do?" I said, "Well, just, you know, Alex is playing the rhythm. You just play the leads in between, just like you do live, you know, a little blues." And he goes, I don't know what you want." And I said, "Well, I just want you to sing this one verse and then just kind of fill in licks." And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting it." And the person that was with him walks up and pulls me aside, and she goes, "Hey, Paul, he just needs a beer. It's early. Get him a fucking beer." So I walk across the street to Frady's, and I buy some Heineken. I come back and I open one for him and one for me. By now it's like 11. And he drains it, and I drain it. And he looks at me and he smiles and he goes, "Okay, let's do this." And they did too. I think it took 2 takes at most. Mark Bingham was behind the panel that day, and he was just having a ball because he loves Vodakovich and George Porter. And Chaz, you know, he plays washboard, but I mean, Chaz grew up playing modern jazz. That was the first music he played on washboard. So to play with those two guys and the rhythm Johnny laid down in that song is just not anything remotely typical shuffle that I had been expecting. It was just behind the groove, beautiful New Orleans funky thing.
Right.
So that's a great track.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of my favorites on there. Blue, Freddie's recommending the Ma Rainey soundtrack. I just remembered this. It was actually recorded, I think, Freddie, you'll have to tell me if I'm right or not, but wasn't it recorded over at the Ellis Marcellus Center? I think they actually recorded the tracks for there. And
it was great. I wanted more of it. You know, first of all, the actress Viola Davis, just amazing as Ma Rainey. I just wanted more of it. It was great, the music.
Right.
You know.
Let's see if he's got any comments for me to tell me. No, Mike, you're completely wrong. No, he didn't say anything, so you know, be there. Wait, he says no overdubs. Oh yeah, no, it was New Orleans musical performances. New Orleans musical performances, no overdubs. Um, wow, and I can just imagine, that session was probably, man, quite the thing to be in on with Terrence and that. Wow.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, for me, the Nine Lives experience was partly that. The day Alan Toussaint showed up, it was like royalty was
Man, he
arriving.
was royalty.
You
I
know,
mean,
the
he is.
the control room was packed, not just with me and Mark Bingham and Coleman and Michael Service and John Boutte, but with Mayor Landrieu and Judge Monique Morial and Jacques Morial. And there were all these notables who loved New Orleans and, of course, adored Alan. And he walks in elegantly dressed, of course, as he always was, and does a polite nod to the group of just adoring fans packing the control room, way too packed. And he walks to the piano and he makes something about the seat needed to be adjusted a little height wise, very softly. And then we played the track, and people were just agog. I mean, he got applause at the end of it. And I said, okay, Alan, that was fantastic over the talkback. And he just leans in very softly, says, there was an adjustment I heard during bar 32 through 36 that I think could lift the song a bit higher. Could we just do one more time? And Mark Bingham went, please, please, please. Yeah, another take would be great.
So this is one
And
of the
so
ones where you were okay with there not being a mistake, because Nine Lives wasn't a rock and roll record. This was a different record.
I was being as reverential as you would to a
Of
king,
course.
and as deferential. And at the end, he was fine, and everybody was sort of celebrating in the control room, listening to the playback. And while they were listening, he called me into the big room and he said, could you accompany me to the big studio? And it was just he and I alone. And he said, I just wanted to get you alone to tell you that I think this is a very important project for New Orleans that you're doing. And I just said, thank you.
Right.
And thank you for being part of it. And when he left, he turned and walked away. And I felt like I had been knighted.
Wow.
Sir
Paul Sanchez. After
Well, I didn't call myself that.
I'm kidding.
But I felt like, well, you can, Mikey.
Right.
I'm going to just say you can.
Yes.
If you would like to be my new moniker here for the show.
Sir Paul Sanchez. But
I am your senior.
It's even more important that Alan Toussaint is the one who knighted you. That's really the most important.
See what I'm saying?
Yes.
I mean, that's better than the Queen, right?
Come on. Come on.
Come on.
Does the Queen have a Rolls Royce? I don't think so.
Well, let me put it this way: does the Queen have a string of songs written like Alan Toussaint? Because that's what I aspire to.
Yes. Man.
You know what I'm saying?
I tell you, there was.
She can have it, but if I could just have, just one Alan Toussaint song.
I know.
In my catalog.
I know. I remember. It's so funny because I was basically raised on New Orleans music. I didn't discover the Beatles until I was a senior in high school. I mean, everybody knew about the Mop Top stuff or whatever. I mean, how could you not? But all that stuff turned me off. I had no idea that the Beatles went beyond, please, please me. I thought that's what they were, and it's like, that's not for me, whatever. I didn't discover Abbey Road and all the things until I was 18 years old and 17 years
That's
old.
funny.
And then,
See, I had 5 brothers and 5 sisters. So I had this constant barrage of older music, coming at me. And my sisters were going to sock hops, with Ernie K-Doe and, Art Neville singing and stuff. So, like Art Neville's All These Things, I thought that was a national hit.
Right.
I mean, that's what my sister taught me to slow dance to.
That was kind of my point, is that my mom listened to Irma Thomas and Alan Toussaint. And so all this New Orleans music, I thought that was, so that was my thing coming up. That was the music. And, of course, I got into, teenage stuff. I got into, rock music. But it was all, it was heavy or it was New Orleans and nothing in between,
Like when I was a kid, same thing. I got into rock and roll, right? I'd be sitting around having tea with my mom before I went out to play my cool rock and roll. And she'd be talking about when she was young, she used to go out and see this piano player named Paul Gayton play the Cow Cow Boogie Blues. She used to love that. And I used to think, oh, man, she's so square. And then years later, I'm hanging out with my friends, on Frenchmen Street that can really play piano. And say, oh, my mom used to go, your mother saw Paul Gayton? Jeez, pretty cool.
Right. I wish I could have seen him. Right.
Yeah, I didn't know she was cool.
Yeah, who knew? Yeah, I didn't know my mom was cool, but man, I knew all Irma Thomas's songs by the time I was, 9 years old.
Same here. Just because I had older sisters that were walking around hairspraying their hair and getting ready for dates, playing Irma's music.
Right, right. We had Meters records and things, so it was interesting going in down that Beatles, uh, side road that sort of took me in all new directions.
Well, you see, different from me because I'm 10 years older than you. My first Beatle experience was like I was, 6 or 7 years old, and one of my sisters had with the Beatles the black and white cover,
Right.
and on each face was a lipstick print. Somebody had kissed each face, and so like, at a very young age, I was like, chicks dig this kind of thing, huh?
Hey, look at this. When I saw you
And I
guys live,
Beatles.
Cowboy Mouth, it
Kids,
reminded me of Springsteen a little bit. I felt like he might have been an influence on you guys, just with the way that he worked crowds and just some of the
Oh, definitely. Fred and I rode around endlessly when we were in our early 20s, listening to Springsteen bootlegs, him telling stories and inciting the crowd and making it a real show.
right.
And he had the philosophy of there's a guy in the back who worked all week to buy the ticket for him and his girl. He can only afford one beer. So he's hoping that the girl don't ask for a second one. And Fred and I sort of took that to heart in the early days.
I felt like
We
it
were
came
working for
through.
the guy who taught me there.
There's that story
Yeah.
of what is it, Live Aid or something, where Tom Petty and Bonnie Raitt and some other people are backstage, and I can't remember who was on stage at the time, but Bruce was headlining it, and everybody's screaming Bruce, but it sounds like Boo from
No,
backstage.
he was on stage and he was rocking, but they were underneath, and they could hear the Bruce. And Bonnie Raitt goes, "Oh, poor
They're
guy."
booing.
She thought they were booing him.
Right, they're booing. Oh, actually, well, what it was somebody else was actually playing because they hear the Bruce or whatever, and she says, "Oh my God, they're booing the thing." Somebody said they were booing, and somebody else claims, "No, they're saying Bruce because he's coming back up later on." And Tom Petty jumps in and he's like, "Well, what's the difference? I mean, if they're calling for Bruce, you know, while this other act's playing, that was kind of the idea. It's like, isn't that the same as booing? Calling for
Yeah,
Bruce."
well, it isn't, but yeah, I see his point. Yeah,
It's one of those snappy things you say while you're backstage with everybody. That everybody kind of laughs, but in a way,
I love being snappy
of
backstage.
course, that was one of
Being snappy backstage is awesome fun,
we,
especially when you're the one getting the laughs.
yeah, and you were the artist, so we always had to laugh at what you said. We'd be like, "Yeah, it's funny,
Hey,
Paul."
that's nice. I was genuinely amusing.
Yes, and you still are, else we wouldn't be having these morning coffees.
Time is like we at 45 yet.
We're actually at an hour. Look at that.
What is going on with you, man?
We got through an hour, and it didn't even feel like it this time.
Well, we got our technical glitches out of the way. Now it truly is just two old friends having coffee, and
Yes.
occasionally somebody via a question reminds us that we're supposed to be talking about something.
Right, which is a nice thing. And at some point, it might be fun to bring in some other friends to continue the
Well,
conversations
we conquer each technological leap.
at a time, one at a
to
time.
bring in the next
You're right.
party to add
We just get past the
conversation.
one technical boundary, and I'm already going, "Hey, let's throw in somebody else." No.
Yeah, we just conquered it today.
Yes.
Before this show.
Yes, before this show.
Let's relax for maybe one or two shows, and then we'll start making it more complicated.
Yeah, I can understand that. So my coffee, I don't know about you, but my coffee's about done. I got like a half a sip
Yeah, I'm
left.
done with my coffee. I'm done with seeing you. And thanks for everybody that tuned in, even if there was only 4 or 5 of you I don't even know from.
Yes.
And thanks for listening to me visit with my friend Mike
Well,
Mayu.
before we
and
go,
having
let's
another-
see. Chris is on. Chris says overdubs suck. Philip Gooseman says thrilled we get to see this. Oh yes, and then Chris is talking about the royal sandals and how Alan took everybody that played with him to another level. Chris Finney says that, and he's right. Definitely, Alan definitely took everybody to the next level.
Oh, yeah.
And such a, like you said, such a sweet man. I mean, his energy
Chris Finney listened in.
is crazy.
Finney, I love you.
So, yep, that's today's show.
I'll see you Monday, Mikey.
We'll see you Monday. And if anybody's, tweet Paul, or do you tweet? I don't tweet, but maybe I should.
Facebook.
Facebook.
Me if you got any questions.
Yeah, if you want
Oh,
things you'd like us
let's
to talk
discuss
about,
topics. You have a topic? Share it with us.
please do, because we're here for you, really. I mean,
We're here for each other.
yeah,
but
that's true.
It's fun to listen.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to engage with people. You're right. Who are we kidding?
All right.
You take it easy. I'm gonna play our outro song. Remember, here comes our outro song, so you can't go
Oh,
anywhere.
yeah, we have an outro.
Yeah. Here we go. I didn't make it.
like a cat, it was a present from my brother. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't see between the lines. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. Well, her hair is as black as an alleyway, and it used to be red, and it